This is Selma Schimmel, and you are looking live at the great city of Chicago, which is once again playing host to the American Society of Clinical Oncology, ASCO. This is ASCO's 49th annual meeting, and this year's theme could not be more appropriate: Building Bridges to Conquer Cancer. More than 30,000 of the world's foremost cancer specialists are here, and so is our Advocacy in Action feature, making our 15th appearance at ASCO and one of our very best.
When we're at a research meeting like this, it's easy to think that everyone is following the guidelines and is aware of what's most up to date. And Kim has already referred to this, that that's not always the case. And both Kim and Regina have talked about the anxiety that people feel, especially when they're first diagnosed, because you really don't know what you don't know. You're scared of lung cancer. I don't think anybody hears that and doesn't think I'm doomed, right? That's the first thing, because we've had years of stigma around that. And then as they're learning more, they may realize that they should have molecular testing, that there are guidelines like that, but their doctor may not recommend it. So if their doctor doesn't recommend molecular testing, how, and this is the softer side of what we advocate for, but the psychosocial support side of, how do you empower people then to challenge this person that they're relying on to help them get through this difficult period? Do they insist on molecular testing?
Yeah.
How do they do it? And where do they go for it if he's not the guy who's going to drive that forward, or she?
I think most physicians consider it a team approach, right? I mean, maybe that's not the traditional approach between patient and physician, but I think certainly a patient's view on this is probably the most important. And I think that's where education is so key, right? With your organizations empowering patients and just educating patients on what they should be asking their doctors. But you're right, they shouldn't have to do that. That's the doctor's job to do that, to stay up to date and informed. And I'm not defending doctors that don't do molecular testing. I appreciate sometimes the conservative approach doctors take to wait for therapies to prove themselves, to be out there before they kind of do things they're not comfortable with. But you're talking about something that is standard. That we're not talking about a therapy that was just presented at a session an hour ago and should change care tomorrow. We're talking about things we've known about for years now, and we have now actually multiple sets of guidelines that say this is a standard thing. So I guess my view is if a patient is with a doctor that says they don't believe in that, they should find another doctor, because that's like saying you're going to see somebody for a breast cancer diagnosis, but they're not going to test for hormones, or they're going to test for HER2 status. That's just not standard of care. But I do think there is an education process. You brought up ROS 1. I don't think everyone knows what ROS is yet, and they shouldn't, because it's not standard yet. But when that is standard, they should know it. It's just like any new breakthrough in medicine. It's a responsibility of providers to be up to speed on those things.
Actually, the education also involved the pathologists.
Yes.
So pathologists has always been central in, the role is basically making diagnosis, right? Cancer, not cancer, what type of cancers. And of course, the diagnosis is important in terms of what kind of therapy you get. But I think nowadays, with the evolution of the development of the new, more precise targeted therapies, and where biomarkers can actually select patients for specific therapies, from pathologist's point of view, because they were not involved in that kind of treatment, the drug testing, they're a bit behind in terms of their knowledge. So I think now that it's becoming more and more educational pathologists, that there is more than just making a diagnosis. I think actually we need to also identify markers that is really important in selecting patients for specific therapy. So
I would like to suggest now that the pathologists are now a part of the patient's team, a critical part, and that the pathologists can play an important role in educating the doctors about the need to test, and if they haven't gotten that, the pathologist should go back and suggest it.
Thank you to this panel. Thank you to all of you. I hope you have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.